Hi there, Cynthia here with this month's Leadership Log. And this month I wanted to talk about communications. Communications is one of 4 dimensions of culture that we measure. It's communication plus trust, plus accountability, plus alignment. And of course one affects the other, but communication and trust have a bit more heft or a bit more weight in terms of their importance when it comes to those 4 dimensions. In time management, communications is one of 8 topics. That's considered part of time management. And when it comes to time management, communication is defined as meetings of any kind, voicemail, email, and one-on-one conversations. And what I'd like to do in this video is just shortly review the fundamentals of communication as defined in time management. And then I want to share with you the one very key important point in having effective communications. All right. So when it comes to the 3 fundamentals around communication, it's that all communication of any kind should have 3 components. And those 3 components are: they should have an agenda, it should have specificity, and it should be brief. So what does that look like and what does that mean? When I talk about an agenda, it's easy to relate to, okay, we should have agendas for meetings. But you shouldn't hesitate to outline short agendas before you call someone. Maybe we won't call them agenda, we'll call them key points. Outline some key points before you call someone to avoid telephone tag. Outline some key points when it comes to emails so you don't have email tag. And certainly outline key points when you're going to have a one-on-one meeting with someone. Outline key points helps you think about the detail. It helps you organize your thoughts. If you share it with an employee with enough time, it will help them focus and set some expectations about what the conversation will be about. And you don't waste your time or their time, because you've given this some thought and organized it. It can become actually your default approach for having a great meeting. The second thing is specifics. In meetings, you've probably heard me say this before in other newsletters, vague begets vague. If gray understanding goes out in terms of your communication, then the outcome is going to be gray results. So you may want to think about more specificity. And I will say that there are some employees that simply won't ask you to clarify something. So the taking the step of being clear about what you're trying to communicate comes when you're thinking through the agenda. Some employees don't want to ask questions of their supervisors. They don't want to appear unknowing or incapable of asking the right questions and feeling comfortable about it. So especially in this time where we have employees working from home, managers are facing the concept of autonomy. And how do I communicate? I don't think it's communicating more. I think it is actually communicating with more specifics about what is happening, what could happen, asking specifically how they're doing, sharing how you're doing, specifics like that. Okay. And the third fundamental of communication is to be brief. Of course, it's very easy to say that in terms of email. We all want our emails and voicemails to be brief. That can be managed through coming up with the agenda because it helps you think through it. Brevity may not be something that you want to address when it comes to more difficult conversations, feedback, maybe coaching, maybe brevity isn't what you want, but getting to the point early is, and then you can have the conversation. So having an agenda, being specific, and being brief are 3 really important parts of communicating in terms of the fundamentals of time management. But I also shared with you that I wanted to share the one key thing to remember when you're having conversations. And the key thing to remember is that it is a 2-way street. You're needing to either provide information or you're seeking information. Constantly having a top-down approach without a give and take or an open mind to have the give and take can result in biases or subjectivity on the part of the manager or the person calling the meeting. What you really want to do in communication to have 2-way communication is to engage and sometimes guide, right? And to engage and guide, there's 2 things you need: open-ended questions and active listening. So when it comes to questions, in communication, you more or less at some point want to ask open-ended questions. For example, how long have you been thinking about this? Tell me the steps that you took to accomplish XYZ. Share with me your feelings about that particular statement. Those kinds of open-ended questions will enable an employee to share back, as opposed to, of course, yes and no questions. The other thing that open-ended questions does is it helps you and the manager learn where there may be some, what I will call, distortion of thinking, or something that they were told or thought which is not necessarily true or accurate, because they don't have the full picture. What they hear is not always in context. And it may be causing them some problems and roadblocks, which affects not only them, but it affects your relationship with them, it affects their relationship with the team, and it ultimately will affect the relationship that this person has with their employer as a whole, with the organization as a whole. The second thing you want to do besides open-ended questions and listening is listening. So listening actively will help you remain focused. It will help you arrive at a decision, should it be the type of meeting that needs a decision to be shared at the end of the meeting. And the thing with active listening is, if you're on a virtual call, it is perceived by how you look at the employee, which means looking at the camera. It is a little more difficult in a virtual setting, but if you're fidgeting, if you're not paying attention, if you're moving to your phone, that sends messages about the type of listening you have. I heard a podcast, I think I said this in last month's video, where people listen for 3 reasons. They either want to win a point, they want to fix something, or they want to learn. And in this case, in a communication, it's you're wanting to learn, and then being able to engage and guide with the person if there's something that needs to be taught. So the last thing I want you to remember when it's this two-way street is that most people just want to be heard. If the communication is consistently top-down, they're not feeling heard. So feeling heard means that they see that you're actively listening, that you actually care about what they say. They need to feel that they're cared for. And it's so important for their own development. And again, their development in terms of the relationship with the manager, and their development in terms of the organization as a whole. Remember, most people just want to be heard. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree with them, but you need to understand where they're coming from so that you can engage in a fruitful conversation and give guidance when necessary. So have an agenda, be specific and be brief, but never ever forget that it is a two-way street that involves open-ended questions and active, true listening. All right, hope this helped, and I'll see you next month.